Hello and welcome to the NGRAIN webinar, Converting 3D Studio Max Models into Compressed Interactive 3D Simulations. My name is Josie Sutcliffe and I'm the VP of Marketing here at NGRAIN. I'm very pleased to welcome you to today's session and I want to thank you for your time and your interest. Before we start, I'll run through a few quick logistics. We are recording today's session and we'll be posting it online afterwards. We'll be sure to share the link with you. You have the option to listen via your computer speakers or by the phone. You can hear us, but we can't hear you. You can submit a question at any time through the question pane. We'll do our best to answer all questions at the end of the webinar and follow up directly with any questions we are unable to get to. Joining me today is Roland Della Cuesta, NGRAIN's Director of Partner Technical Development. Roland has a background in fine arts, classical film animation, and 3D computer animation. And his experience in simulation began about 20 years ago when he traveled to Africa to model 3D terrains of the environment for a mining industry project. I'll be passing along the session to him in a few moments, but for those of you that are new to NGRAIN, I wanted to start with a bit of an overview. Once I've spoken about NGRAIN for a minute or two, Roland will be taking you into a live demonstration showing you how you can convert your 3D Studio Max files into the compressed interactive NGRAIN format, and we'll actually put the resulting file into an application. So as a quick introduction or overview to NGRAIN, NGRAIN is the creator of a breakthrough volume graphics technology. We're focused on transforming how people share knowledge, from brake systems to propellers and even human anatomy. Organizations around the world are using NGRAIN software to make complex systems easier to understand, to teach, and to maintain. We're headquartered in Vancouver, Canada, and also Richmond, Virginia, and we're represented globally via strategic partnerships. And for the past decade, we've been providing solutions that have been proven to accelerate learning by 60%, improve first-time right job performance by 30%, and enable novice technicians to perform at the same level as seasoned experts. The following list represents a few of NGRAIN customers and partnerships from around the globe. We pride ourselves in partnering and collaborating with some of the best system integrators and technology companies in the industry, and we hope to add some of you on this call today to our network of partners. We've delivered virtual task training to all arms of the US and Canadian militaries, as well as to the UK Ministry of Defence. And the software tools developed and used by NGRAIN to develop these solutions form the basis of the NGRAIN production suite, which we're discussing today. I'd now like to hand our session over to Roland.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. I'd like to welcome everybody from the many locations around the world that I've seen on the attendee list. Hope you aren't all staying up too late for those of you in a different time zone other than the Pacific Coast here in Canada. I wanted to just quickly go over how it is and why we have this technology and why you should too. You know, the thing about NGRAIN Producer and Production Suite, as Josie said, my career in media development has spanned almost 2 decades, and I was really intrigued by what NGRAIN does. It's really true. What we do makes 3D development, especially for training and support, faster, easier. It's a one-stop shop, so integrated. You're going to see this in the demonstration, that the 3KO technology of NGRAIN not only allows you to have a model and animate it, but to integrate it into applications, interact with the model on the fly, and more importantly, the file sizes that you're going to see, and I'll demonstrate that later, are highly deployable. A quick workflow that we wanted to go over that we're going to do over the entire series of the webinar. Just for your knowledge, if you haven't joined us on the first webinar, this is a quick overview. Right now, what we do is we take models that are created from different types and formats across the industry. You can this webinar is focusing on 3D Studio Max, but we're capable of being converted from Autodesk Maya and a whole host of different CAD formats. We take the created model, either you model it by hand and manually create it, or purchase them online. You can use CAD models, and then we take them through a conversion process, which I'll demonstrate today. You can then take those into our authoring tool, Producer Pro, add life to your static model, and then through our builders and our plugins, integrate them into an actual app that you can use in a classroom situation, deploy on media like DVDs, or broadcast on the web. Using any digital content creation tool, such as 3D Studio Max or Maya, and any computer-assisted drawings, such as CATIA or SolidWorks, there's actually a whole host of different formats that we use here at NGRAIN, and you can learn more about those file formats on our website. Right now, let me just give you a quick introduction to what we'll be showing today. Today I'll be using Okino Polytrans, which actually comes bundled with the NGRAIN production suite. A little bit about me. Again, my digital media profession started in the early 90s. I have experience in GIS, film, video games, and simulation. And I came to NGRAIN almost 7 years ago, and I really wanted to just say that as a media developer throughout my career, one of the things that really grabbed my attention with NGRAIN is the technology that we use here, which some of you may or may not be familiar with. That's Voxel Technology. Our 3KOs are in voxels. A little background to them, if I can start with a quick analogy. A voxel is to 3D what a pixel is to 2D. So the wonderful thing about Voxel Technology that you'll see in just a few minutes is the nice compression that it will give you. Most of us started in a polygon world. In the voxel world, there's so many opportunities to use 3D. Before I begin the demonstration, a quick rundown. I'm using a desktop PC, production desktop. I've got an Intel Xeon CPU with a 3 gigahertz processor, 8 gigs of RAM, and I am using an NVIDIA Quadro 600 video card. I understand that some of you may or may not have that same spec. If you're wanting to evaluate Producer, obviously you can go to our website and find out what the good specs are for you to be using. I'll also be in a Windows 7 64-bit environment. I've got Autodesk 3D Studio Max 2011 64-bit installed on my machine. I've also got the Okino Polytrans V5 with Super Installer for Max installed. And I'll be showing things in NGRAIN Producer Pro 5.0. I realize that I'm in 2011, but the Okino Polytrans plugin is up to date for the most current releases. All right, let's get started. I'm going to open up here a model that I have of a marine pump in 3D Studio Max. This pump actually exists, and it's being used by commercial and military customers today, and simply it pumps water off of boats. It's a very common apparatus, and what I'm going to show you just in a moment, this is a 3D Studio Max, and I've got what those of you who use 3D Studio Max recognize as dummies. These play an importance in the conversion process. I'll just double click on a few things here just to show you that these dummy objects will later in the 3KO interpret into assemblies. So as a production methodology, my background at Endgrain is I ran the development of the production team, and we wrote a very honed process for multiple or group team activities in producing 3D material for customers. And if you want to learn more, you can log into the website or contact us later. The quick demonstration. I've got 3D Studio Max. I go to my Utilities panel, and I look for the plugin from Okino, Polytrans I/O converters. When you click on that, you get the Polytrans command panel that pops up on your right-hand side. I look for the Endgrain export selection. I'm going to call this the P100 pump, just like the model. Hit save. And the conversion process, you can see in the status bar, it starts to begin. You get the Endgrain export filter dialog box to pop up. You pick your dimension. As I was saying earlier, voxels are to 3D what pixels are to 2D, so I have to pick a resolution. Just like a JPEG would be 800 by 600, a voxel model in all three dimensions would be 1,000 pixels. So instead of having a square at 1,000 by 1,000 on the X and Y axis, I've got a cube with 1,000 pixels in all three dimensions. I'm going to make sure that my visual quality is high, so when the voxel model re-renders, it's at a great, at a good visual fidelity. And I'm going to click to my Advanced tab. I'm going to make sure that I've got a 3KO picked for the right format and the latest version all the way to the right. I've got a paneling here that's called multi-resolution. Quick explanation for that is a model that has dynamically different sized parts between large and small. We put the settings in to balance out the difference between large and small. So the minimum resolution to try to make use of good file efficiency for file size for the big parts, and enough resolution in the maximum parts so the small parts don't get lost in the mix. They have some good crispness to them. The parts axis alignment checkbox allows us to commute the local axis information from the max model to the voxel model. Again, the max model is in polygons and the voxel model, the 3KO is in voxels. And then geometry instancing for those of you who are familiar with 3D models. Parts that have come from the similar or same geometry, like a bunch of nuts and bolts, we click that box to make sure that the file size stays efficient as well. Once I've done setting all that up, I just click OK, and the conversion process begins. Now, this model, I've timed it, takes about 4 to 5 minutes, but I'll save you the hassle. I've already prepped one for you. Here is the model that converts out from the 3D Studio Max model. This is actually the Endgrain voxel model. You can see that all the parts here in the parts tree have been converted. Those dummy objects, those green boxes that you saw in the Max model, turned into these assemblies. Now I've got all the parts that I've wanted grouped together for organizing groups of parts. If I can just right-click and show you in context view, I can actually see that those assemblies that were the dummies allow me to group parts so I can pick things easily as they should be in their subsystems within a model. Okay. I'm going to exit context view. So it is quite a busy model. You can't really tell from that Max model, we were just doing conversion, but this model has over 200 parts in it. I'm going to quickly run through adding a few keyframes. This is Producer Pro 5.0, and like any other DCC, digital content creation package, I have the ability to animate. I've got an animation panel over here. I'm going to click Add New Animation and create a new startup snapshot here and at my 00 time stamp. And the wonderful thing about Endgrain Producer is it's very easy to use. For people using Max or Maya or other 3D packages, learning Producer is really quite an easy transition. In the timeline, I can double-click to just add a new keyframe and move them to where I move those keyframes to where I want them in the timeline. I can add a call-out directly to my 3KO. I'll click one right now. This text box allows me to enter text like a label. I'm going to call this the P100 pump demo, October 10, 2012. I'm doing this so that we can look at it later on the recording on YouTube. Okay. And updating a keyframe is simple as right-click and capture all. I can copy keyframes and paste them back in to make a bit of a pad. I can add motion to some objects. Let's pick the gas cap. I'm going to rotate my scene a little bit. Capture a keyframe. Put in a bit of a pad. Then I'm going to pick an object, simply move it using my Move Part tool. Capture another keyframe. And then I'm going to add a little call out just for kitsch. Let's see here. Fill with unleaded gas only. I don't know. Just being funny. And I don't have to, here's a wonderful thing, I don't have to render this out to an AVI or anything of the sort. Right now, if I want to just hit play and see what it looks like, I'm going to click on my first keyframe and hit play. And this actually is the animation that I can embed into an application. I can put this in a PDF, a Word doc, a PowerPoint, or include it in one of our products, VTT, Virtual Task Trainer, or VTR, Virtual Task Refresher. I'll do that in just a second. I'm going to save this out now. Let me go to one of our applications here. Oops. Pardon me. I'm going to open up the Endgrain VTR Builder. This is one of the applications that you will get when you buy Endgrain Production Suite. I'm going to start by adding my 3KO. Just oops, pick that P100 pump. I can see that I've got a 3KO associated with this file. I can add a logo. Let's see where I had that here. Oh, I've got a logo right here. I can add one here. Add your own logo here. I have to give it a name, so let's call this the Endgreen 3KO conversion webinar VTR. Okay. I can add a tab. In this case, I could add just purely a text page where you can introduce your VTR to your end user with some text information. But in my case, I want to add the 3KO, so I'm going to click on the Add NGRAIN Viewer tab. Then I'm going to pick the configuration. I only have one in that 3KO. And I'm going to call this New tab Filling the Tank. It's as easy as that. And all I need to do now, I'm going to save this. Let's put on my passport here, the webinar folder, P100 pump. Oh, I'll put it in the VTR builder. Okay. Now I've got a VTR task refresher here. I'm going to double click on it
and give it a second to load. So here's that P100 VTR, the virtual task refresher, with the logos that I included, a little bit of text here. I'm going to show you, you see that there's the animation here in the right column. I've got it selected, and I can play it from the embedded play buttons, just like a video. You've got the callouts from the that we just placed in there a second ago. You've got the movement in the gas cap, and then the other callout, fill with unleaded gas only. Haha. I'm going to reset it. Obviously, this acts just like an NGRAIN viewer. You can move the scene and rotate the scene. You can manipulate the model itself by moving parts. Click the Move tool here. I remind you that this is all in a single 3KO. A 3KO is like a one-stop shop. I didn't need a separate AVI to run the animation and then switch back to a polygonal model. This is a voxel model that is all in one.
Anyway, that's pretty much it. That 3D Max model, one thing I did want to show you, if I go back up to P100 pump, this model the Max model, I have this open live right now. The Max model was 101 megabytes. The file that I'm working from right now is a mere 15 megabytes. That's what I was talking about earlier. The compression capabilities of 3KO voxel models from NGRAIN is spectacular. I've been working with polygon models for close to 2 decades, and I've not actually seen a model compressed with such complexity. Let me go to the parts exploder here to actually show everybody on screen how many parts are in this model. This model is a mere 15 megs, and in Max, having to manipulate a 101 megabyte file really does take a production machine, and as you know, I was using a Xeon processor at 3.1 gigahertz with 8 megs of RAM. I can run this voxel model, this 3KO, NGRAIN 3KO off my laptop. And that's really something that makes me excited and keeps me going working at NGRAIN, knowing that people out there can start using this technology and really start showing off their 3D. Okay, I'm going to pass off the microphone back to Josie. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Roland. It's great to see a 3D Studio Max model get converted into such a compressed interactive file size. And the great thing there, I know that we hear quite often, is the lack of manual reduction you need to do before you convert. You just do a couple of settings and you can convert over, and gone are the hours and hours of deleting polygons. So if you can just click back into the PowerPoint, we'll just sum up with a couple more slides about what the production suite is all about. So the production suite is the most comprehensive set of tools for rapid development of interactive 3D training and support applications. So with it, you get the Okino Polytrans converter capability that you just saw Roland demonstrating, as well as Producer Pro, where you can create your animations and real-time practice tasks, as well as a number of power tools that are going to be a topic of an upcoming webinar. The power tools are all about letting you work very efficiently and effectively in a studio environment. You also includes the application builders. The Virtual Task Refresher Builder is one example of that. So in a matter of minutes, you can actually drop your 3D knowledge object into an application. As well as for those that want to do a deeper integration, the NGRAIN Integration Kit. This lets you access the very deep application programming interface that exists with the NGRAIN viewer. And then finally, we also have a production suite site that provides tech resources, tech notes, and so on. This is provided to all of our users of the production suite, letting them go online, download the latest power tools, access tech notes, and so on. To give you an idea of our pricing, production suite is at $15,000. That includes your first year of maintenance and support, and you can also purchase Producer Pro on its own for $3,000. A really key note, there's no royalties or deployment fees ever. You get the software and use it to your heart's content, delivering solutions to your customers and end users. This is just a quick snapshot of the production suite site to get a sense of what you'll have access to. It also includes a number of other supporting materials that we'd be happy to go on over as a follow-up. To give you an idea of some of the resources that are accessible online today, you can access feature videos and tutorials at the links you see here. NGRAIN also has a blog called the Knowledge Grains blog that has some interesting articles, a little bit more information about just what are voxels and that sort of thing. We have a couple of upcoming webinars. In the next webinar in a couple of weeks, we will have Jason Spencer, who's one of our trainers here, talking in greater depth about how you can create animations and real-time practice tasks with Producer Pro. And then the follow-on, I believe Roland is returning to talk about power tools and application builders in greater detail. So that ends our webinar. We'd now like to open it up to questions. Let's just have a look at the question pane and see what's there. All right, so I have the first question, and it is about what if my model changes? So this is a very common question we get, so Roland, maybe you can answer that one. So what if their 3D Studio Max or other model changes?
All righty, that's a really great question. Everybody knows from a production perspective that, you know, there's always going to be revision concerns. Actually, we have a power tool that is included in the production suite that allows for change management, and that will be covered in my next webinar.
Okay, great. Okay, the other, sorry, one more question here is What about Maya and Lightwave? So this is, I think, a person that doesn't use 3D Studio Max.
As far as 3D Studio Max, Maya, and Lightwave, the Okino Polytrans Super Installer plugin is available for Autodesk Max and Maya. I see one here. What about converting CAD, as you mentioned? Actually, the strong partnerships that NGRAIN has, we also have another tool that can be used. Polytrans can be used for CAD, but we would suggest a stronger tool in Transmagic, and that's also available through NGRAIN. It can convert over 81 forms of CAD, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so. Another question here is, can you now animate gases and liquids? And perhaps that question ties into some of our new fluid flow capabilities.
Sure. We certainly can animate movement. We don't animate gases, but we do certainly have this brand new feature to Producer 5.0 in animated arrows, which allow you to create a path with as many control points as you'd like. You can manipulate the colors of the arrows, the size of them. They can ramp up and down. They can color cycle, etc. You can lay them in real time to your 3KO model, following paths like hoses and vents, and that certainly does the trick for many of our customers. In fact, that feature was developed based on client demand. We used to animate things in 3D Studio Max and have to render them out in AVI. The nice thing about the new feature in Producer is that you can have that right in your 3KO and you don't need a separate rendered piece of media.
All right, another question here is, can you convert ZBrush or ZBrush files, which also does OBJ?
Yep, you certainly can. Polytrans, Okino Polytrans is fully capable of converting OBJ files.
Great. Another, which was sort of a combination question comment from someone in France, is after conversion, it's a good practice to group different elements together. Does that make it easy to pick up and move elements around?
Yep. In terms of what I demonstrated, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. Just like those dummy objects in 3D Studio Max, when I double-clicked on that node, was the parent object of all the objects. What we call assemblies in our 3KOs act the same way. If you double-click on the assembly name in the parts tree, then it selects all of the child objects as a group, and then you can use the move tools, rotate tools, just as you would a single object.
Hey, well, I've just noticed that we're just heading past the half-hour mark, so we're going to wrap up the webinar now, but I want to thank you all for your time, and for any questions we're unable to answer, we'll be sure to follow up with you afterwards. Thank you very much. We wish you all the best day or evening, depending on where you are.
Thanks so much, and have a good day.